It was only natural after my video on the least fair death battles by their own logic that the next topic in this series looking at the death battles' internal consistency would be to look at the closest episodes. So let's do that. But once again, I have to re-establish the rules because I know the 40% of you who listen will need to listen. This is looking solely at death battles' own stats and given advantages. If you ever have to bring in something external about the characters in to make an argument, then you've missed the idea of the video. However, bringing in external logic when it doesn't alter the values given themselves is fine. For instance, if you were to compare one character at 10 gigajoules versus one character at 1 megaton of TNT, then converting those units to get the difference would be acceptable. However, saying that in actuality the 1 megaton feat should only be 1 kiloton of TNT is going beyond the bounds of this video. And once again, no episodes prior to Season 4. They are very difficult to gauge due to different standards in both research and writing. You might also be asking, why is this only top 10 when the last one was top 20? Well, the simple thing is that it was quite difficult to find 10 episodes that were really close in the first place. Most episodes have a large enough gap, and while I could do numbers 11 to 20, there'd be a pretty major shift midway through the video, as the first 10 would just be close stats and little else, while these ones will not only be a stat difference but also other given advantages. People complained that the least fair video was too focused on stats, but when it comes down to it, those were not only easier to compare, but really all that mattered when it comes to not being fair. Aside from Ultron vs Sigma, which was very difficult to quantify, all of these battles really do come down to stats, which is why I brought up the speed gap for Raven vs Twilight and Strange vs Fate, because even if the losers had the ability to win, they were too slow and physically weak to actually accomplish such things. Additionally, I should be clear on how these episodes are being measured in this video, because it was a real headache to figure out a way to order these episodes of points. We're going to be thinking about it like this. Imagine you have a scale. On one side represents one character and another side represents the other. Every advantage one character has adds weight to their side, the weight of each advantage more or less being determined by how important they are to the debate. When all's laid out on the scales, how unbalanced will they be? The more balanced it is, the closer it is, and the higher it ranked on this list. A lot of these are a bit interchangeable though, admittedly. I should have also mentioned last time that I'm excluding episodes that are wrong by their own logic, which had its own video which you can go check out. The reason for this is simple. I could look at the stats and it'd be like, yes, this was a big stomp, or it was very unfair, but it was wrong anyway according to them, so there's no real point of being here. Now without any further ado, let's get to the 10 closest episodes of Death Battle by their own logic. Number 10, Lara Croft vs Nathan Drake. Okay, so this one literally is just here because I needed something at number 10. This isn't exactly an episode they concluded was terribly close. However, it has the smallest stat gap of the remaining options that I looked at. Lara was given every advantage to an unquantifiable degree. However, her strength was measured at being able to push 27 tons, while Nathan could only push 20 tons, a 1.35 times difference. So essentially, it's just that 1.35 is smaller than all the other numbers aside from the 9 above. Lara did kind of body Nathan in every category, which is not the most interesting start, but what can you do? Number 9, Sub-Zero vs Glacius. Unfortunately, this one kind of fits into a similar boat. Sub-Zero was given the advantage in everything except speed, where the two were placed even. Sub-Zero had better training and abilities, and he could outmaneuver and avoid all of Glacius' options. The only thing that makes this closer than Lara vs Nathan is that speed is equal, and the difference between Sub-Zero's attack potency and Glacius' durability is only 1.1 times, 63,000 psi to 57,000 psi. That's about the most interesting thing you'll ever find in this episode, I can guarantee you that.
Nice theory. Let's test it.
But hey, that's...
Number 8, Black Widow vs Widowmaker. And, I mean, this one's not super exhilarating either. Black Widow was put at 2,669 joules, or street tier, and Widowmaker was put at... who knows. They put her essentially at peak human, which is an issue because Natasha is right in the middle of street level. Widowmaker herself could be street level as well, anywhere between only 300 joules to 15,000 joules. She could also just be only athlete, we don't know, they didn't really say anything. It's very hard to gauge who has the attack potency advantage, but generally they gave it to Natasha. Both were also given equivalent bullet timing speeds, and advantages against each other depending on the range the fight was taking place at. However, the reason it's down here really is that Widow, they outright said, didn't have any of the other advantages. Everywhere else, Black Widow had the advantage. The only thing Widowmaker really had was a gun. And when they were in melee combat, Widowmaker really had no advantages of her own. It is similar to Sub-Zero vs Glacius in that speed was even and the winner had every advantage, including a slight strength one, but it's technically closer because while Glacius didn't have any advantages independently of it on his own, Widowmaker did have the extra ranged ability. Glacius technically had that too, but they didn't say that Black Widow's skill and moveset completely outdid it like Sub-Zero did to Glacius.
Oh? A visitor?
Mr. Luthor!
Number 7. Lex Luthor vs Dr. Doom. Okay, so I know some people who weren't paying any attention to the rules are going to be asking how this commonly considered stop matchup is in this list of closest, but those people are the kind who only clicked through the video to see what went where and didn't actually listen to what I was saying. Lex Luthor vs Dr. Doom is the first matchup where the loser has an actual advantage of that actually matters. Lex Luthor was placed at 2.5 times faster than Dr. Doom, and they said he could counter some of Doom's tech, but that's about where it stops for Luthor. Both are placed at universal and attack potency, and while they do say the DC universe is 100 trillion light years, while the Marvel universe is only 1 trillion light years, they also actively imply there's not much of a gap here, meaning it's unlikely that they're using volume scaling for this. Volume scaling being when, this universe is bigger than the actual observable universe in real life, so that means it's low multiversal to destroy it. That wasn't being used here. Not every versus debater uses it, admittedly. Anyway, the reason this is here is just because Luthor had the stat advantage. Because Doom had everything else. His hacks was up the ass. Transmutation, mind transfer, nerve scrambling, antimatter, cosmic energy siphon. Interestingly, this is one of the only times where Hack's abilities outdid a stat advantage. The only other incredibly noteworthy time was Mewtwo vs Shadow, which by its own logic was wrong. So, Gotcha. Number 6, She-Ra vs Wonder Woman. I like how, so far, 3 of the most boring episodes to me have all ended up on this list. She-Ra vs Wonder Woman was a case of She-Ra having the advantage in strength, though to an unknown degree. In fact, they both say it's a sizable advantage, but also that Wonder Woman is at least comparable, so I can't really gauge it. However, they also put Wonder Woman at 2 billion times faster, with an atom-cutting sword and better experience and skills. The only reason this one is here is because, while there is a higher speed gap than Luthor vs Doom, She-Ra is at least given the strength advantage to make up for it, but also, Wonder Woman only has one Hack's ability as mentioned, her sword, while Doom is given tons of abilities that would work to get rid of Lex. Really, it's a much of a muchness. This is what I'm going with though, so shut up. Number 5, Sanji vs Rock Lee. Oh my god, are we going to bring up any episodes I actually like in this video? Sanji vs Rock Lee is a rather interesting case where Sanji has a lot on his side of the scale. While their training is apparently even, Sanji has observation haki and a 52.17 times power advantage against Lee prior to the 8th gate. However, the scales are a bit more balanced out by the fact that in the 8th gate, Lee has a 33,333,333 times power advantage over Sanji, meaning the number advantage on this state is so high he could easily one-shot him. And the speed advantage Sanji is given is only 13 times above where Lee was placed, meaning it's actually a fairly close match here. Even if Sanji is unquantifiably faster than that with the raid suit and has invisibility, it's still pretty close, which is about the nicest thing I can say to this episode. Number 4, Silver Samurai vs the Shredder. Finally, an episode I really like! Silver Samurai vs Shredder I honestly expected to get to the top 3, but it barely got edged out. The episode gives Silver Samurai a 1.2 times strength advantage and mobility with the teleportation ring, while it gives Shredder a 2 times speed advantage and enough intelligence and skill to bypass the teleportation ring, essentially making the stat gap stupidly close. However, both are also given the clause that they could one-shot each other, with Shredder's skill and Samurai's Tachyon sword. So this essentially comes down entirely to a 2 times speed difference, which might put it above the next entry if it weren't for Super Shredder. Super Shredder, essentially they said just bodies Samurai, he's too strong. But they didn't give any quantifiable measures, so I don't know how to value that beyond making it not as close anymore. It sucks, but what can you do? Number 3, Nightwing vs Daredevil. This one should be no surprise. They outright say it's one of the closest episodes they've ever done, and it kind of is. Both of these characters aren't given much in terms of comparable stats or feats, but according to Death Battle, Nightwing is maybe a little stronger, and Daredevil's maybe a little faster, but the two could likely pull off the same feats as each other. Their training was also considered comparable, and both could make use of the environment even when dark. What ended up tipping the scales to Nightwing was a simple thing. Nightwing could perfectly exploit Daredevil's own weakness in the sonic wingdings, which is kind of why this isn't number 1 or 2. All 3 of the top 3 are cases where the stats are almost identical and their abilities are matched super well, leaving it down to really just one thing. They're all fairly interchangeable, but in this episode's case, the deciding factor was a major weakness exploit, which I consider to be, well, major.
What? That's impossible!
Now you're catching on. I am the impossible!
Number 2, Beerus vs. Galaxia. Okay, hold on, I know what you're thinking. Yes, they did say Beerus is potentially way stronger than where they put him, but that is hard to quantify. For the purposes of this video, we're taking their results at face value. Where they placed these two was extremely close to one another. Beerus was given a 1.12 times strength advantage, and Galaxia was given a 1.5 times speed advantage. Stat differences so close they might as well not have mattered. Beerus could make up for the speed difference with Ultra Instinct, and that strength difference is completely minuscule. It pretty much might as well not exist. In terms of their other advantages, Galaxia had a wider array of abilities, but Beerus had the capacity to negate them, meaning it essentially came down to the fact that Beerus had superior skill and Galaxia had unlimited stamina. Between those two individual factors, skill was more important than stamina, because in the end, Beerus could win this episode by just using that strength advantage and skill to take out Galaxia before she could outweigh him. Galaxia's stamina advantage would only really matter if the battle were not long enough, which it most likely wouldn't. Galaxia could have won by just beating him down herself, or outlasting him, but Beerus would get off his win conditions more often than not. It is surprisingly close with what Death Battle directly gave them. Pretty crazy, isn't it? Honorable mentions. So I have a few honorable mentions for some episodes people might have expected on here. And by that I mean one episode that people might expect. Flash vs. Sonic. To me, what Death Battle gave these characters, if anything, turned it into a bit of a stomp in Wally's favour. Sonic's advantages were nothing. No, literally, Sonic didn't have a single advantage over Wally except that his super form was invincible. And the only equivalent stat they had was speed. Wally couldn't physically beat Super Sonic down, but every other advantage went to him anyway. In terms of strength, Wally outmuscled Base Sonic, and they gave no evidence that he couldn't outmuscle Super Sonic. They did say that Super Sonic has multiversal reality warping, but that's not physical strength. Wally still takes raw power from what we've seen. In terms of overall attack potency though, not just physical, they were essentially even. Sonic could reach multiversal and Wally could also reach multiversal. Though with Wally he did need help, so you could argue Sonic was given the advantage in that regard, I guess. But that literally does not matter, because that's where the hacks comes in. According to them, Wally could just outright negate everything Sonic had. Reality warping, chaos control, wish powers, fate manipulation, Wally could resist and negate all of it. In terms of speed, they say it's a bit of a non-factor, but Wally can still keep himself ahead of Sonic by just stealing Sonic's speed. The best they have for Archie Sonic is that he can resist the speed steal. Essentially, Sonic's win condition would be for Wally to let himself get hit by Sonic's abilities. Wally had tons of win conditions involving outlasting, killing too fast, bypassing the super form, and just generally avoiding Sonic altogether. Sonic's only win condition was if Wally didn't bypass his super forms as he could in multiple ways, or if Wally for some reason just didn't avoid his reality warping. Sonic really wasn't given much of a chance. There were also two that I thought might end up here as well, Natsu vs Ace and Batman vs Black Panther. Now it's mostly because, you know, Natsu vs Ace, Natsu could eat Ace, but that doesn't really matter. What matters are the stats, and they said they're both at town level and faster than Eyesight, but Natsu was a bit faster. The main issue, however, is that they just literally outright say Ace could not harm Natsu at all, meaning that Ace literally had no win condition. Batman vs Black Panther, both are also put around war level, but it's the suit. The suit just undoes everything. Black Panther's suit just, it's bullshit. Now let's get to the number 1.
Holy jumping giblets! TJ Combo takes the title in absolutely brutal fashion!
Number 1. Balrog vs TJ Combo. This one should not be a surprise to anybody. These two are given stats so absurdly close they might as well not matter. For speed, they're not actually given anything, and for durability, they're not given values either. But for strength, the difference is 1.007 times in favor of TJ. That is such an astronomically low difference that it literally does not matter. Balrog has a chance of throwing a punch equivalent to that if he just punches twice and puts a little more force into the second one. Other than that, the only advantage given is that TJ is more experienced. That's it. TJ won purely based off his experience and the triangle theory, an external element that doesn't actually have any real grounds in these actual characters, and doesn't look into the nuances of their fighting styles. TJ's victory came as a result of having boxed longer, and the fact that on average boxers of his style do better than boxers of Balrog's style. This is absurdly close, and one that I will very openly call the closest death battle by its own logic. So that was the video of the 10 closest death battles by their own logic. Do you guys want to see me do just a 4th finishing video going over every other death battle between season 4 and 8 that was not in the closest or least close or death battles that are wrong by their own logic? I could easily do that. I have got all the values written out. I wrote them all out to see what would make it to this video, so I do have the data already. I could do that openly. Regardless, I hope you guys enjoyed. This was just a fun little video to make. Yeah, see you next time. Have a good one.